But thanks for coming back. I hope you enjoyed it so far. What I'm going to do the second half is now talk about the murders themselves. And I'm going to break them down, and hopefully you can use the information that we've just looked at to incorporate into the murders themselves and try and make some sense of them. And I'll also look at, for the last sort of 5-10 minutes, a new suspect who came to light a couple of years ago. But without further ado, the murders themselves. The first one was actually in 1887, and it was the murder of a woman allegedly called Fairy Fair. You don't find that name anywhere in the newspapers apart from a newspaper called The Star. This was a complete fabrication, and the reason it was a fabrication was because sex sells newspapers. And The Star decided to make up this wonderful murder because there'd been a lot of rip murders for a good few years before this. So they made up this story about a woman called Fairy Fair being crossing this piece of land, and she'd been ripped to shreds and left for dead. She never ever existed. Well, this was the newspapers trying to draw attention to their newspaper, and also the fact that there was something going on in the background which they wanted to bring to the attention of the public. You've then got a number of worthy murders as far as this inquiry is concerned. February 1888, a woman called Annie Millwood, she actually survives, but 10 days after leaving hospital she dies, gets peritonitis. A woman called Ada Wilson, she's the next one in March. She's a prostitute, again she survived, and she had her throat cut. And this was probably a robbery that went wrong, but you cannot rule anything out. One of the things that we know about serial killers is that they're rarely, the first really good murder you get doesn't really start there. This guy's been practicing for a long time before the first murder. This guy demanded money and cut her throat, and she gave a description to the police. Now my job is to sit down with witnesses and take descriptions and then do artist impressions, or they're actually called composite sketches. And I've sat down with every description given by the witnesses to the inquiries, and the same guy comes up time and time again. That's what the guy looked like. A normal man, this browny ginger moustache, but not a massive one, just an ordinary Victorian man's moustache, an ordinary hat, sideburns, and that's the description you get over and over again. So this is why when I say about the guy with the top hat, to forget about him, please forget about the top hat and the tails. A really important murder is that of Emma Elizabeth Smith. She was 45-year-old, she worked between 6 o'clock at night in the early hours. On the 3rd of April, it's a Tuesday night, she staggered back to her lodgings in George Street, and she was absolutely dripping with blood and in a really bad state. Head bruised, ear torn, abdomen injured, peritoneum split, internal organs ruptured by massive force, and she died 4 days later in the infirmary. Now what do we know about that murder and why is it important? We know she sets off about 11 o'clock at night. It's a horrible night, it's teeming down with rain, and it's been really steamy as well. And our friends are saying to her, look, there's some bad business out there, be very careful when you go out. And she said, oh, it's okay, I'm alright, I'm okay. And we know she went there, and she went on to the Whitechapel High Street. And when she's on there, she sees a group of men, and she crosses the road to avoid them. That's going to tell you something. That's going to tell you one thing: she knows who these people are. The men follow her across the road. They then take her into a lane. The men come behind her, one of them stops her, they surround her, and some kind of transaction takes place, verbal transaction, after which one of the men takes an object, we believe it's a knife or a kosh, and rams it so deep inside of the vagina, it actually rips the peritoneum, and it ruptures all her internal organs. Now one of the big problems with that is you're probably going to get fatal peritonitis. When you get that, you're conscious for a day, and then you go to virtually days, and that's you finished. Once you've got that, especially in Victorian times, you're virtually knackered, you're finished. We know the men walked away and left her like that. She's pouring her blood. She takes her shawl off her shoulders and she puts it between her legs. She's only got a half a mile to walk between where this happens and our lodgings. It takes her nearly 3.5 hours to get home. She passes police officers, she passes people on the street. Why doesn't she tell anybody? The logic is very simple. She knows who these people are. If she tells who they are, they'll kill her. She doesn't realise she's going to die anyway. She gets home, and the girls take her straight to the infirmary. The 3 friends take her straight to the infirmary. The doctor's there, humming hard, and she dies very soon after. The doctors don't tell the police until another 2 or 3 days afterwards. The police then are alerted to the fact there's been a horrendous murder, but they're not linking it. It should have been reported straight away, but it was never reported until 3 or 4 days later, so we've got a big problem. But Smith is a really important player. There's a woman called Julie the Ripper. We think it's a woman called Mary Pacey. She is the abortionist who works for the Ripper gang. Now the High Rip gang employ this girl, and whenever their prostitutes get pregnant, Mary Pacey will perform the abortion. We know for a fact that Emma Elizabeth Smith's boyfriend was a thief called Fingers Freddy, he's a pocket dipper. And we also know that Fingers Freddy was trying to blackmail the Rippers, the girl who's doing the abortions. If you do that, you're going to have the gangs on top of you. And we think that the background to this case is the High Rip gang trying to get Elizabeth back. She never ever named the people, but she obviously knew them. You then go to the serious contender, it's a woman called Martha Tavram. Now, this woman's only in her 30s, would you believe, when she dies. This is Martha Tavram, as you see her in the post-mortem. She's 36 years of age. She dies on a Tuesday night again, 7th of August. She's seen with a mystery soldier. She's with a girl called Pearlie Paul, who's as mad as a fish. And she's an Irish lass, and this Pearlie Paul has got an incredible ego, and she's going to cause all kinds of mayhem during this inquiry. She's found at 40:45 in the morning, and the body's inside a place called George Yard, where all the girls take the customers back. So the background to this is that the two girls are working together in a pub, a couple of soldiers pick them up, they then go away to perform the sex acts, and they say, right, I'll meet you at X, and then Martha doesn't come back. Pearlie Paul's left standing there, and a couple of hours pass, and eventually the body's found. When Pearlie Paul knows that there's been a murder, she comes forward to the police, and the police do a really good job. They say, right, can you identify the man? Oh, I'm not, no problem at all. Right, they actually go to the nearby barracks, they line every man up, and Pearlie Paul is the big witness, she's going to pick the man out. Instead of picking the man out, she starts shouting, attention, left turn, right turn, and she makes the whole thing into a complete debacle. The police now waste 2 or 3 days waiting for her to sober up before they try again. It's a waste of time. So that could have really been detected. What happens is incredibly important. The body's placed in a pool of blood. The body is actually lying on the pool of blood. There's no drag marks or footprints, and this is very, very common with all the Ripper murders. The hands are clenched and the clothing's dishevelled. The clenching of the hands could be the fact that the girl's been partly strangled. She's been stabbed 39 times on her left side. What does that tell you? Now, the reason it's important, okay, we've got a guy on the right, but the reason it's important, they stabbed. The Ripper did not stab, he cut. And there's a massive difference. You only stab somebody 39 times when you're really, really angry. You've lost your temper. The Ripper never ever lost his temper. Everything he did was very, very well controlled. And that's why when some people try and link the Martha Tavram murder, the differences are phenomenal. But the police are still alerted there's been this horrendous murder, and they're aware they've got to be very, very careful it's going to happen again. We've got 9 to the throat, 17 to the breast, that's obviously sexual as well. Wounds to the genitals, and the eventual death is penetration of the heart. It's actually quite hard to do. All the wounds are caused while the woman's alive. This has been a guy who's really lost his temper, he's gone to town on her, and this poor girl's seen the blows raining down, she's bled to death when he's left her. Time of death around about 2 o'clock, so she's laying there for a couple of hours. But again, you've got to take some of the time of death with a pinch of salt, because when you lose a lot of blood, the temperature is going to drop very, very quickly. There's a big problem here, because when you strangle somebody, I don't know if you know, but the body temperature goes up for at least an hour. Another time when it goes up is when you're on insulin. So those two things you're going to be very careful with, because the hypothalamus really gets played havoc with. And that's how I see from the descriptions how this girl was left. Lots of blood, but the blood's mainly underneath the body where it's actually fallen down the body cavity. But we haven't got a cut throat, this one, so it's quite different. You then move on to Polly Nichols, who's the first canonised victim. Now all I want to do is to talk about the relevant facts, not the background, the relevant facts to the murder. What do we know? One of the things that I used to do a lot of for investigating officers was something called a helicopter perspective. And that's when you get above the murder scene and you're looking down to try and choreograph what's happened. So what do we know about the immediate vicinity and the immediate time? She lives in Flower and Dean Street, which is where the yellow dot is. At 11 o'clock we know she's there. Now, Polly Nichols is a very, very private woman. She's so private she's got a double bed to herself. And that cost 8p. She's got to make certainly a few pennies before she actually gets her lodgings. We know she's in Whitechapel at a pub called the Frying Pan at 12:30. We know that she's next seen at 1:30 back to where she lives, and she's got a new bonnet. Nobody knows where she got it from, but there's this joke going on, I'll get a fella because I've got this lovely new black bonnet. And away she goes out again. We know from there she goes to, at 2:30, meets a woman called Emily Holland, and she tells Emily Holland, look, I've had a dozen men, and I'll get another one, don't worry about it, I'll get another one. We've then got a gap. We know she's in Whitechapel Road, but then she heads up Whitechapel Road, and she ends up in a place called Books Row. And a man called Charles Cross finds her, and this is when all hell breaks loose, for all the wrong reasons. So what we've got is this man finds her, he looks at the body. Now she's actually got a bits and pieces exposed, and in Victorian times you don't let a woman have exposed genitals. He covers her up. So he's basically interfering with the crime scene, but that's what Victorian men did. He's so frightened he gets another man who's walking past her. Do you think she's dead? They don't realise, because if you ever see a dead body in the dark, it looks, when the light's flickering, as if they're still alive. It looks like they're still breathing. They can't tell. So they run off and get a police officer. By this time a police officer's come back, and the police officer gets a man called Dr. Llewellyn, who's an old drunk. He doesn't like poor people because they smell, he doesn't get the money off them, and he makes it obvious he doesn't like poor people. So when this Dr. Llewellyn comes back, this young police constable who's dead keen is watching what's going on, and he can't understand why the doctor doesn't even turn the body over. Surely to God you've got to turn the body over. And the doctor's just saying, oh, take it to the mortuary, I'll sort it out in the morning. And this young police officer's saying, but doctor, I'm the doctor. Now in these days the doctor told the police how to go on. So this young cop says, no. The inspector comes along, Inspector Spratling, and the policeman says, boss, I think seen it, the body. And when he lifts the body up, the blood spills out, and he realises this is not just an ordinary murder in the street, this is savage. And this is where the murder takes place. And this is the group of houses outside of which Polly Nichols' body is found. What do we know? The first thing Dr. Llewellyn says, she's got clean thighs. Now what does he mean? What he means is he's looking for signs of prostitution, he's looking for seminal fluid on her legs. Now the girls didn't wear knickers as we wear them now, like mine. What they used to wear is drawers, the crotchless drawers. So if it had a man and the seminal fluid spills out, it would run down the leg. So the first thing he's looking for is the signs on her leg of these marks. There's nothing. She's not had sex. Or certainly not within the last half hour or so. The throat's been slashed in a way, and the doctor didn't pick this up. Head's almost off her body. She's thought to be still alive, but again you've got this big question. No signs of a struggle, there's no defence wounds. Nothing is heard. Now bearing in mind she's outside of houses. Some of the people in the houses have heard different sounds, screams and shouts, but they didn't hear the murder. And that's significant because it's obviously the way the rip is working, strangulation, she can't shout, you cut somebody's throat and they can't make any noise at all. The weapon's a long-bladed knife, there's bruises to the face and body, there's a jagged laceration from the ribs to the genitals. What does that tell you? Why is it jagged? It's jagged because she's fighting. She's alive. If you cut somebody with a sharp knife, you'll make a clean cut. If the cut's jagged, that person's trying to stop you from doing what you're doing. Now, when the police realise there's been an horrendous murder, it's not just a case of somebody's just died on the street. The inspector says, right, get the body to the mortuary. The mortuary's in the workhouse. Don't let anybody touch it until we get there in the morning. Get that bloody doctor back again. And the hammer and the doctors don't say, right, come back, you're going to perform a post-mortem at 7 o'clock. The doctor says, oh, okay. The problem is when they get the body back to the mortuary, and it's in a wheelbarrow, when they get it back there, two of the paupers whose responsibility is to look after the mortuary, they haven't realised that we're not supposed to touch the body. By the time the police get there, the doctor, the body's been stripped, the clothes have been thrown away and burned, evidence has been lost. So from start to finish, this murder was a debacle. She's got 2 stab wounds to the genitals, throat's been cut first, other wounds while she's on the ground, which is exactly the same MO. And we've got, for the first time, trophies. Her rings are missing. These are little brass rings. They're not worth anything at all, but they've been taken. The Ripper has taken these as trophies to relive the crime. This is the popular newspaper and magazine description of how the murderer would casually walk away. Never ever like that. Never like that. This is a reconstruction, again using all the evidence available of how this girl was left. She was left exposed, she got this jagged cut, and because this Charles Cross has covered the body up, the doctor's never even bothered looking. He's looked at the thighs, but he's never looked beyond that. If you cut something like that, if you almost cut the head off, they're going to lose a lot of blood. The doctor never even picked up the fact this body has got a lot of blood. By this time, the blood's running into the gutter and down into the gutter. Why was she attacked in full view of passers-by and occupants? This was never the way the Ripper was meant to work. This one went really badly wrong. And my feeling is that he's probably realised that he's probably got to her too quickly. He's probably made the proposition of being going somewhere and she's being spooked. She's trying to get away, so he's got to kill her there and then. Every other murder, he's made very, very certain to get her somewhere safe and somewhere quiet. The next murder we've got is very shortly after Annie Chapman, or Dark Annie. This is how we find her after the post-mortem. What do we know about Annie Chapman? She lives very, very near to Polly. Whether or not they know each other, we don't know. Where the yellow dot is where she lives. 5 o'clock, she's at home, she's absolutely ill. And her friends are saying to her, you shouldn't be going out tonight. She says, I've got no choice, I've got no money, I've got no choice. We know for a fact she's got some kind of medication with her. But again, this is really irrelevant. What's more relevant is what happens after this. Between 11 and 1 o'clock, she's back at the house, backwards and forwards, she's incredibly drunk. She's had half a dozen men, but she spent all the money on booze. 1:35, she's got that baked potato, she's back in the house eating the baked potato, and she heads off up here, and at 5:30 she's seen by a woman called Elizabeth outside of 29 Hanbury Street. It's really significant, because the man who will kill her, this is the one that Elizabeth sees, this guy's got his hand on the wall, and he's here. And there's a transaction going on. It's a very friendly transaction, and Annie's saying, yeah, okay, no problem at all. And we know within seconds of that taking place, he's actually propositioned her, he's told her what she wants, they've then turned left, straight away they've turned left again inside this alley, and they've headed towards the backyard of this house. And that's where the murder takes place. At 6 o'clock, the body's discovered inside of a yard. So 5:30, the actual transaction takes place. 6 o'clock, the body's been discovered. That's half an hour. Half an hour. Take away 15 minutes, the murder's actually been committed within a 15-minute period. The inspector gets there, the doctor arrives at 6:30, he said she's been dead 2 or 3 hours. It's rubbish, because we've got a sighting at 5:30. What he's done, when you look at rigor mortis and liver mortis and body temperature and alga mortis, he's taken the body temperature and said, right, the body's cool, the chances are she's been dead 2 to 3 hours. So this is a bit haywire. We've also got trophies taken at the same time. This is the second one with trophies. She's on her back, there's 6 patches of blood on the fence above her. Now we don't know if the patches are spurt or it's finger marks, because there's no description apart from patches. Thumb-sized bruise, which means he's been pinning her down. Now bruises is really important. You cannot bruise a dead person. If I punch a body, I'll leave a mark, but it's not a bruise. If I punch a living person, it'll leave a bruise. Really, really important. So bruises have been inflicted when the person's been alive. The throat's cut deep in a jagged manner. Again, what does that tell you? This girl's been fighting while he's been cutting the throat. And we've now got body parts missing. So this is number 2, if we believe the canonised victims, and we've now got this full offence taking place. This is what he's intending to do all along. He's taken body parts. We've got the stomach, the wall, and the womb. Upper part of the vagina is gone, most of the bladder's removed, the uterus is removed, and again, this is bloody clever. The intestines removed and thrown around the body. The doctors who get there said the intestines have been arranged. They hadn't. This guy's after the uterus. You've got to get the intestines out of the way. He's put them to one side, and he's now working on the body cavity below. Legs are raised, hands arranged by the killer. They were never arranged. It's exactly where they've been thrown. Again, The doctors are obsessed with this word arranged. Things lying outside of the possessions God love are around our body. This is just where they've fallen. No struggle, assaulted from the rear. Yep. Medical knowledge. Now the doctors couldn't accept that somebody who wasn't a doctor would know how to get a uterus out. But you've got butchers who are very, very good at this kind of thing and very quick as well. This really gets me. What they said was because there'd been so little care taken when ripping the rings off a finger, they'd been interrupted. Hang on a second, you've just taken half our bloody stomach away. Are you going to take care when you're taking the rings off our fingers? Of course you're not. And the doctor also comments on the tongue protruding. What does that tell you? This is evidence of pre-strangulation before the throat's being cut. So we're looking at this timeline and this pattern where the body temperature's been reduced, where the blood temperature's been reduced by part strangulation before the throats are cut. And this is going to cause all kinds of shit. There's a bloody leather apron nearby, and the expression leather apron is really important, and I'll tell you why. This is the yard in which Annie Chapman was led. Now, Annie Chapman's going first, the man's going behind. As soon as she steps down, the hands around the throat, or the garrots around the throat, and she's strangled, and that's when the offence takes place. And she's found dead just in front of these steps. Now then, again from the description, this is my drawing of how she was actually found, how she was left. Beside her head, you've got body parts, the intestines are spilling out. That's exactly the way the body was left. Why, after this murder, do we suddenly get this letter to the press? I'll tell you why. This poster appeared the next day. Ghastly murder in the East End. Dreadful mutilation of a woman. Captured leather apron. So whoever the Ripper is, he thinks he's the best murderer in the world. He's the most prolific, he's the cleanest, he's certainly the best serial killer the world's ever known. And the press are giving him the nickname Leather Apron. There's a guy called John Pizer whose nickname's Leather Apron. That's what they think they're looking for. Because a little bit of bloody leather apron's being found, they believe it's Leather Apron. The Ripper does not want the world to think he's just called bloody Leather Apron. And that's why he writes it. You might as well put a poster up saying, capture slightly soiled Y-fronts, and give him a name as crap as that. So this is the first time you've got a letter written to the press, and he signs it Jack the Ripper. And a lot of people, a lot of psychologists believe it's because the Ripper's being given this pseudonym, Leather Apron, and what he wants to do is give himself a good name. Did you come across a murderer called Colin Ireland? Now, Colin Ireland used to murder gay men, and because the police weren't taking any notice, he wrote them letters and said, would you please announce the fact that I've killed these men, but call me the fairy killer? And the police said, no. And he was suggesting to the police what name he should give himself. This is massive ego. This is huge ego. And this is very typical of what the Ripper's doing here. But look at this, we've got apostrophe S's. I don't even use them. This guy's if you believe it's his writing, he writes regularly, he's self-confident, he's full of character. It might be true. Do you remember a guy called Humble who lived in, half a bloody son was written in front of the Yorkshire Ripper murders. But look at this. When the Ripper writes a letter, when the original Ripper writes a letter to the press, dear boss, I keep on hearing the police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. What is he saying? I keep on hearing, he's on the streets, and he's right in the middle of it. This is amazing, but the police never picked up on this. Dear George, I say you have no luck catching me. I have the greatest respect for you, George, but Lord, you are no nearer catching me now than you were. Do you remember the tape? Yeah. Why didn't the police pick up on the fact? Dear George, I see you are having no luck catching me. Where's he watching? He's watching the telly. He's not in the streets. If that had been a murderer, he would have said, you're having no luck catching me. I see. Absolute bollocks. And this caused another 2 or 3 months to be murdered, because this was never picked up on. We've then got the night of the double killings, which starts with Liz Stride. Now, this was a really strange one, and a really important one as well. What do we know? This is where Liz Stride lives, where the yellow circle is. We know that at 7 o'clock she's at home, she's got this piece of velvet and sixpence. Now, these girls had an out. So when she's got a little possession, they brag about it, they talk about it, and it becomes noticed. At 2300, she lived in a pub called the Bricklayer's Arms. Now, she works at the other side of the High Street, Whitechapel Road. 2345 St Bernard Street with a guy. At 0035 St with another guy. She's been with 3 guys in this short period of time. And that's where she is. The little red triangle is Bernard Street. She's then at 1:15 seen by a man called Israel Schwartz. Now, do you remember me talking about Lipsky in the first half? Significant, because Israel Schwartz comes up, little Jewish guy, overtly Jewish as well, with little ringlets and things. And what he sees is Liz Stride at one side of the road with a fella. At the other side, there's a guy watching. He's got a pipe. And as soon as Israel Schwartz comes into view, the man with the pipe stops, points and says, Lipsky. Now, if you're a little Jewish man and this word means you're going to be murdered, he legs it. And he gets away quick. But he also sees the man with Liz Stride. We've then got 15 minutes later the body of Liz Stride in the yard. And it's found by a guy called Lee Dimschutz. Now what we know is that, and here's the yard, just next to the arch here, that's the yard where she's found. We know for a fact that inside of this yard on the left hand side is a gentleman's club with some stairs. And it's full. And we know that little Louis Dimschutz, he's got an bottle, bless him, and he comes in with a little horse and cart, and he heads up the alleyway, and his intention is to stop, unload the cart. It's 1 o'clock in the morning, and he's going to take all this stuff to the club because his wife's a barmaid there. The horse shies, and he looks down and he shits himself because he sees a body there, and he's not going to hang about to find out where it is. And he flies upstairs and he says to himself, the body. And his wife comes down, he stops upstairs, his wife comes down with a couple of guys, and they find the body of Elizabeth Stride. Sadly, pretty well good luck for him, it looks like the river's being disturbed. This is Liz Stride. She was found dead at 1 o'clock. She had a pool of blood with legs drawn up. Body's still warm, it's got a deep cut to the throat, but nothing else. This has been a disturbance. Why didn't the Ripper kill Louis Dimschutz? Why didn't he kill him? It's because he would? No. The reason he didn't kill him, he doesn't give a shit. He's in the middle of a murder. Now, this guy is a vigorist. This is when he gets incredibly sexually aroused. He's in the middle of this sexual arousal. He's got to finish this off. So to hell with Louis, he's not going to get in the way. He's run off, and he now runs off. But it's very clever what he does. Now, what the doctors say, again, you've got this arranged thing. Forget about it. The hands were never arranged. We've got cashews, which they used to use just to keep the breaths clean. No struggle, no footprints, no blood on any upper clothing. She bled to death, but she couldn't call out because her windpipe had been cut. And the guy's got 15 minutes to commit this crime before he's disturbed, and then he runs off. Now, seen by Israel Schwartz, and the description that's given is the same man with a little brown moustache. This is the yard about 2 years later, when they're bringing tourists down and charging the tourists to take photographs inside where the girls are being killed. The next murder, again significant, is Catherine Edwards. This is within a very short time of Liz Stride. This is how she's found, and we've got 1:45, the body's found in Mitre Square. Very significant, again, in locations. This location here, on the bottom left, is on the right, sorry, is where the murderers just left. This is Bernard Street. This here is where Catherine lives. This is the police station she's currently locked up in, and that's where she'll eventually get killed. Very, very important we'll look at these. Now, when the Ripper leaves the yellow dot there, very clever, because what he knows is that he's in the Metropolitan Police area. There's no radio communication. He's got to get out of there and away from the Met. And he knows when he crosses Whitechapel Road, in the top area, he's in the City of London area, and the police won't know there's been a murder. Very significant. What do we know? 8 o'clock, she's kicked out of her lodgings, and she tries to pawn her husband's butts to get some money. 8 o'clock, at the night time, she's legless. She's drunk and incapable, she's locked up on the street, and she's dragged to the police station, and she's checked every half hour, which the police have always done. At 0050, the killer has left the yellow dot, and he's making his way across the City of London, here. We know for a fact that at 1 o'clock, Catherine's released from, instead of going straight home from the police station, she comes down here, and she meets up with the Ripper, probably accidentally, but she's vulnerable and she's ready to be killed. At 1:35 St Duke Street, which is there, and the description is exactly the same every time. Every time we got a description of the ripper, it's this same guy. She's found dead at 1:45. There. Now then, the body's posed, so the doctors wasn't posed, it was just left. Legs apart, clothing pulled up around her waist. Around the body, 2 buttons, a metal thimble, a mustard tip. This is all this girl's got in the world. No footsteps, no signs of a struggle. Her face is being greatly disfigured. And a lot of people put a lot of credence on this, but the likelihood is this guy is just so high. She's probably moving about, and the knife's going everywhere. This is probably accidental as opposed to deliberate. Intestines pulled out. There's fecal matter all over the place. One piece of intestine is detached and placed between body and arm. Body temperature is high. She's been strangled, it would be. Missing kidney, missing uterus. No indication of skillfully removed. Tip of nose and lip cut off. And the cause of death exactly the same. The cut of the carotid. It's the same guy, obviously. Now this creases me. The doctor said the death was immediate and mutilation performed after death. Nobody dies immediately. If you cut the throat, it's at least 2 minutes. Only when you die immediately if you jump from a train and it's going pretty fast. And it's a thing I don't recommend anybody to do. This is the yard. It's actually outside the policeman's house. It's in the open. This is the photographs from the post-mortem. And the colour one really gets me because this is a human being that stood up. She's actually on a hook and they've taken the photograph. And this is something they used to do, crime photographs for murders. They used to stand up on a hook and they used to take the photograph. This is after the post-mortem. You can see the big stitches. This is after the post-mortem. And you can also see the cavity here sagging because there's no innards there. The innards have all gone. Now then, there's a piece of petticoat gone from this girl's clothing. A policeman called Alf Long is a few streets away in Goulston Street, and he finds a mark on the wall. This is going to cause all kinds of trouble. The Jews and the men that will not be blamed for nothing. You've probably come across this before. It's outside of a Jewish club. If this should have been left, underneath this sign, there's a piece of petticoat with fecal matter on. Now this policeman doesn't know there's been a murder a few streets away, but eventually finds out and he takes this to the scene and it matches the piece that's missing from Catherine Eddowes. So it's the same guy who's dropped this here. This is going to cause all kinds of problems. This is where the murder takes place. This is Goulston Street, so we know the ripper's made his way east, down here and away he goes. Now then, what do we call Goulston Street now? It's called Petticoat Lane. Now then, the witness descriptions, Schwartz and Lavender, another man give police a similar description, same man. Every time you get a description, it's this man with a moustache. Forget about all the other guys with the top hats, the royal families, Prince Charles, no. We've then got this massive deal of public disorder and police protections given to everybody. And the Home Office are now telling the police there's no more Ripper murders. There's no more Ripper murders. So quite all the murders that happen after that, they don't become Ripper murders. But there's the one that escapes, and that's the murder of Kelly. Now then, this is the crime scene photograph of Mary Kelly. Can you see the bed here? That's Mary Kelly's intestines. They've been taken from her body and they're just being dumped. Lots of interesting stuff happening here. We know there's been a window broken. She's the only one that lives inside and takes men back to her room. She's found on a Friday. She lives where the yellow dot is. Again, what's happened before is very relevant. There's nothing relevant before 11 o'clock when she's seen in the Queen's Head. And that's there, where the star is. 11:45 is a woman called Mary Cook, seen with a big moustache man, and this was never the same guy. 12:30, she's freezing cold, she's outside of her little lodgings, and she's singing a song called Only a Violet from Mother's Grave. If you get the chance, YouTube it. It's a haunting song, a really popular song in the music halls. Only a Violet from Mother's Grave. 1 o'clock, she's back in her warm. At 1:59, a guy called George Hutchinson sees her with a strange man. And this guy's really important. George Hutchinson's following around everywhere that night. And while she's actually in the house being murdered, he's outside. The reason he's outside is because he's going to rob the guy that's going to come out. But unfortunately, the guy's in there too long and he comes away. This is where the scene, 2 o'clock, Hutchinson meets Kelly again. There's some transaction about we lend some money out, I've got no money, I've been in the races. They're down here. 2:05, they're now walking back to Miller's Court. This is where she lives again. And this is the description that is given to the press. The guy on the right is Hutchinson, and the man with Kelly is the alleged murderer. At 10:30 in the morning, a guy called Thomas Boyer goes to the house, and he's after the rent. He knocks on the door, she's in big arrears, there's no answer, he pulls the curtain back, sees the body, all hell's let loose. Now then, the broken windows got glass on it, the victim's on the bed with massive mutilations. This is not the same as the other murders. Nose and ears cut off, all the internal organs missing, totally disemboweled, all the organs are around her, surprisingly small amount of blood. If you see the crime scene photographs, there's blood spatter all over the wall. So how this comes about, I just don't know. The death caused by severance of the throat, uterus, kidneys, one breast under her head, a big knife used, no signs of a struggle, and the body's found at 10:45 in the morning, so it's pretty cold by this time. She's been skinned. The internal injuries are phenomenal, almost down to her spine. Mostly after death. What you've got as well is the fireplace, and in the fireplace there's some clothing. It's not hers, it's a friend's clothing. Why? I'll tell you why, because there's no lights in these places. The murderer's actually taken the clothing and put them in the fire, set fire to them, and he's now got some light to work by. That's why the clothing's in the fire. She's been seen alive at various times during the early hours, we know that. Drunk when last seen. The time of death, 3:30, around then. But the woman upstairs, he's actually murdered at 5:30, so there's a big problem here with the time of death. Now look at this. This is the murder photograph that you don't often see. At the far side, at the top of the picture, is her intestines on the table. Look at her left hand on the body. Again, there's a huge question mark about why this left hand is in that position. Why did this man cut her breasts off? This is totally against everything else he's been doing. Why was there only one written murder which showed arterial spurt? It was never the same murderer. Why burn the clothes? To get light. Why remove her face? He knew her. You always find in serial killings where the face has been removed, this is a psychological thing where the person is looking at him and he doesn't want to be seen, and they will mutilate or cover the face. And why, when the rest of them have been so clinical, was this one so amateur? It was never the same guy. This is the little apartment she lives in. Within months they're taking tourist photographs, which is beggars belief. We've then got after that at least a dozen mutilation murders. Annie Farmer, Laughing Village, she's got all the money in her mouth. The reason that prostitutes didn't give her oral sex was because the Jenny kept the money in their mouth. Rosie Mylett, Lizzie Jackson, her body was all over London. Nosewarmer Alice, she's found at 12:50 in a Castle Yard by police. Exactly the same MO. But it was never a murder. Lydia Hart, it's only a torso found. Everything else is cut off. And this is the picture you see. She's also had breast implants by the looks of her, she's God love her. I mean, it's crazy what the press do. The press, they're absolutely ridiculous. Frances Cole, I mean, look at the character in that girl's face. You can almost bring her back to life. There's a policeman called P.C. Thompson finds the body and she's still alive. And he also sees this man running away. The Metropolitan Police rules are, if you stay with the body if it's alive, forget about the perpetrator, you keep the body alive. He kills himself after this, but he hates the fact that he's missed the chance. He actually gets murdered the same policeman a couple of years later. Big dilemma. And we're found beside a lamppost 10 pence. It's poor Frances' money that she's collected overnight, 10 pennies against the lamppost. God love them. Let's compare the injuries of the 5 canonical victims. Number 1, Polly, Annie, Liz Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Kelly. Look how different Kelly is to the rest. This is the throat cuts. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. See the big difference with Kelly? It's the left-handed man as opposed to right-handed. The new profile that comes out, this man's between 25 and 35, probably near end of 25. Lives locally. Serial killers always commit their first murders within 7 miles of where they live. He knows the area like the back of his hand. There's nothing unusual about him, otherwise the girls wouldn't have gone with him. He's got a police record, married, likely, accomplices, very, very powerful man, very good with knives, he's probably a butcher, may have been in the army, he's got financial means, he's a pigwarist, very confident and a bloody supreme egotistical man. He's a leader. And this killing career starts a long time before the first victim, before Polly. And he's so bold to actually infer that this man goes into pubs to pick his victim up. It's rubbish. He's never seen in a pub. He doesn't need to be. He can patter. He can stop a girl on the street, patter with that, and take her away and answer. And they also said he might be Jewish. Okay, we'll accept that. We talked about asphyxiation. Why did none of the doctors ever pick up on petechia? I'll tell you why. That is a Victorian post-mortem table, a mortuary. That's a modern one. It's not unusual for these things not to be picked up. They didn't have the equipment we've got now. Only Chapman shows suffocation, strangulation. Can you believe there's only 5 Ripper murders? Can you believe that? Let's go back to the records, and I've gone through every record for 10 years. Now, Whitechapel is about the same size as the East End in Hendon. So put this in perspective. How many murders do you think there were in 10 years in the 1880s in Whitechapel? How many murders? East End and Hendon? Would you believe 3,359? That's over a murder a day in Whitechapel. How many were female? A third. How many had trophies taken? This is all police reports. Over 222 had trophies taken. How many were convicted prostitutes? And most of these girls were never convicted. 114. How many had their body left in the streets openly displayed? 258. How many were rip murders? How many of these bodies were found with intestines spilling out? 708 in a 10-year period. Only 5 Ripper murders? I don't think so. Do you know how the Victorians differentiate between murder and suicide? The doctors, again, they laid the rules. If the weapon's in the same room as the body, it's a suicide. So you've got a knife in your back, but it's in the same room, it's a suicide. How many suicides involving knives were there in that period? 1 year. How many suicides in Whitechapel? 410. There's some deaths going on in Whitechapel, I'll tell you. Do you think we can still accept the ingredients that you generally get churned out over and over again in some of the books? Patricia Cornwell, when she blames Walter Stickett, none of it's rubbish. If you get the chance, read a book by a man called Carrie O'Magellan. It's called By Ear and Eyes. It's the best book on the Ripper murders. It's well worth a read. Where was the murder between the lay-down period between Chapman and Ells? There's a couple of weeks off. Well, what about Bertley? There's a murder on Bertley Fell, and it's a girl called Jane Beadmore, or Jane Savage, that's also called. She's got a boyfriend called William Waddell, who's a little bit strange as William, but her body's found, and it's a written murder without a doubt. The police notify the Met come down, the doctor and a detective, and they're never going to ever admit this is a Ripper murder. It's 100%, certainly a mimic, if nothing else, of a Ripper murder. The police say that definitely not to go back to London. So we're now looking for William Waddell. He was never anywhere near, but he knows the police are looking for him. He ends up in Scotland, and he ends up getting pulled in at a place called Yetham, Kirk Yetham, and there's a policeman called P.C. Thompson, gets hold of him, gets him in the cells and interrogates. This is obviously a hero policeman, this guy can't read and write and he can't tell his name. But somehow, in this guy's police pocketbook, there's a statement made and signed by William Waddell who can't read and write. This eventually goes to the police station, the court, and the page is being written in his pocketbook. And the judge says, well, where's the page where he signed the statement? Oh, I had to tear it out. Why did you tear it out? It was sensitive. Oh, fair enough. This is all that's left, a signature which William Waddell didn't even sign. We then got in the police station in Bertley, a chance conversation. A guy called Tommy Sykes overhears the conversation. And he said, I must be out of my mind, I wouldn't strike a woman, let alone do a thing like that if I was in my right mind. He's not admitting the murder, but the court believed he was. And this lad, after 25 minutes, jury's out, was found guilty of murder at home. Now I'm going to end up with a little piece about a new suspect. A couple of years ago I was doing a talk with this last kid, so I think my granddad was Jack the Ripper. Now you think, oh, it's you. But the lass was called Diane Bainbridge. A lovely lass, and the reason I thought I'm going to look at this was because what she was saying was, I'm not trying to prove he was, I'm trying to prove he wasn't. And when I listened to her story and helped her start to investigate, it was fascinating. 2012, she finds in her family history box this little memento mori card. And the memento mori is when you get when somebody dies. This is James Walter Robert Webb. He's only a bairn. He's born 1881, he dies 1888 in Whitechapel, or East Fincham, so the next parish along. But who is he? Because there's nobody in their family called Webber. The death certificate, the father's William John Webber, the sister is Annie Jenkins Benjamin, and the marriage certificate, William Benjamin Belcher. Big problem, there's nobody in her family got these names, so where the hell does this come from? Now then, the card was owned by the Williams family from Hartlepool. When she gets the census, the family tree, the London family, William Benjamin Belcher, born East Finchley 66, Annie Jenkins, born Budley Sultan 64, and Kate Ellen, Whitechapel 86. The Hartlepool family, William Williamson, born East Finchley 66, Annie Williamson, born Budley Sultan 64, Kate Ellen, this is the same family. So why suddenly, in 1889, does the family change the name? Why have they come to Hartlepool from the Whitechapel area? William Benjamin Belcher is a really good suspect. Why? So why does he come to this area? Why did they change the name? But we know the travel backwards and forwards regularly. We've got records which show that. Now Grove Street, we made a big mistake when we started to look, because he lives in a place called Grove Street. Now Grove Street is the next one along to where Elizabeth Stride was killed. But he didn't live there. He lived in Grove Street in the next parish. He lives about 6 minutes walk away from where the Ripper murders take place, in another Grove Street. What do we know? How can we fit this man called Belcher into the known traits of the Ripper? One of the things we know about serial killers is that nearly all, 99% have got an abusive childhood. How can we prove that for a man who was born in the 1860s? Another thing about serial killers is that nearly all got head injuries. Fred West, nearly all of them have got significant head injuries. All these guys here, very significant. There's something else, crime stressor event, which means it's just before the murders happen, something significant happens to them, which triggers them off into the murder spree. Now then, what about childhood? We know, for example, Fred West had 2 massive head injuries. We know for a fact that Fred West was taught by his father the sex education lesson. He was taken to a field and he was told to put a pair of wellies on and put the sheep's legs on his wellies and didn't leave the sheep that end. This is the kind of childhood that Fred West had. Plus everything else, he was going to be a serial killer when he grew up. Now as far as our man's concerned, his childhood, and this is the family history, he's born in 1864. He's the eldest son, there's another 4 sons born. Now in 77 a kid called Joseph is born. At that particular point his mother's a prostitute, we know that. We know they live in one kitchen, and the men trail in, come out and out, and during this time the mother is dying of tuberculosis. By the time 1880 comes, the mother's died giving birth to this 6-month-old fetus. We've then got William Benjamin Belcher, who's the eldest one in the family. He's still only 12-year-old, looking after the family. The father's buggered off, he's away. So this guy's childhood is now dead and gone. This is the death certificate, which tells you this woman's been bleeding to death for over 5 years. Her name's Ellen Belcher. So how would that affect him? Child's going to be lost, and he would see this constant sexual trafficking. He hate prostitutes. He would also blame his mother's sexual activities for his own misery, and the fact that his own childhood's come to an end. And he also would see the woman giving birth, and a fetus that's actually killing her. Would that be enough reason for a man to go and rip uteruses out? Very possibly. We know for a fact that uteruses were removed, but we know for a fact that this was very significant for William Benjamin Belcher. Is it easy or hard to remove a uterus? Well, if you're a butcher, it's very easy. And that's when you go to the in-laws. This place, Budley Sultan, William Webber His father-in-law was a master butcher in Budley Salterton. He's a wife beater, he's got convictions, and he gets bankrupt and he comes to London. He takes on as an apprentice William Benjamin Belcher. What about knowledge of the area? Where Mary Kelly's killed, 30 feet away is the milk depot where William Benjamin Belcher works. He's a milk carrier, very, very strong man. So we're ticking boxes all the time. Esther Belcher. Now Esther Belcher is his cousin. She's a convicted child prostitute. Massive, massive case in London which involves a cousin of his who was actually seen by a guy called Richard Stevens who collects all the evidence. Esther Belcher, at 11, 12-year-old, is collecting young prostitutes, 11, 12, 13-year-old, taking them to the master prostitutes and getting them involved in prostitution. She's only an 11-year-old, that's his cousin. What about the police collection? How would a man know where to go to get rid of the police? For example, if you want to get rid of the Elizabeth Slide area, go for the Metropolitan, the City of London. William Benjamin Belcher's brother-in-law is a police officer in the Metropolitan Police. We've then got in 1888, when there's a downtime in the murders, a murder in Bradford of a little boy called John Gill. Now what do we know? John Gill is helping a milkman in Bradford. He's only a bear, he's only 7, 8-year-old. He suddenly disappears. And he's eventually found in a yard covered in horse manure. And when they found his body, his limbs had been torn off, he's been cut open, and his body cavities have been replaced by a pair of boots. This has been a really, really savage murder. The man who's arrested for it is called Barrett. Barrett is a cousin of William Benjamin Belcher, also a milk dealer, also a milk carrier, and these people visit each other regularly. Is that a coincidence? We now know he moved to Hartlepool, and within a very short time, in Seaham, which is just a short walk from Hartlepool, a girl called Caroline Winterskill, the 2nd of August. We know for a fact that Dad's a miner. At 9 o'clock he sends her to the corner shop with a halfpenny for a couple of eggs. When she gets there, a man basically says, I'm your cousin, I'll give you half his children if you come with us. He goes down to the beach, and the little girl's found at 7 o'clock the next morning, and they believe again it's a Ripper murder. The body's so bad they believe it's a Ripper murder. It's discounted. Now then, William Benjamin Belcher, there's a man seen running back towards Hartlepool, exactly the same description as Belcher. It's a weekend murder, same description, body's mutilated, and it's his birthday. What better way to celebrate than killing somebody? Now the last piece of evidence for this guy, have you heard of the Ripper Diaries? Mm-hmm. The Ripper Diaries are supposed to be discovered in Liverpool. A guy called Michael Barrett, who's married to Anne Graham, he discovers the diaries, and Anne Graham is the woman who produces them. Anne Graham's father is called William. William's father is called Adam. Adam Graham lives in the next house to where William Benjamin Belcher lived in Hartlepool. And these diaries tell you everything about the Ripper murders. Is that a coincidence that one diary which portrays everything is found in an attic next door to where these people live? Memento Mori, which is the card that started all off, means remember you will die. When you look at these murders, these girls didn't deserve to die. We will probably never know who Jack the Ripper is, but still it's one of the most fascinating series of murders which you'll ever come across. But the next time you think about it, the next time you read about it, the next time you see a television program about it, think of the background. You can't just go into a murder and detect it not knowing the background. One of the funny things I ever got was a guy who rang me up and again was on the killers. And I said to him, hang on a second, I said, what are you? He said, I'm a ripperologist. I said, okay, how many murders do you attend? He says, none. I said, how many postmortems have you been to? He said, none. I said, it's a matter of interest what you do for a living. He said, I'm a bus driver. But there are lots of people out there like that who get very hot under the collar about the Ripper murders. They own them. I hope you never get like that. But I hope the next time you see this on the TV or you read about it in a book, you think about the background. Hope you've enjoyed it, or maybe enjoy is the wrong word. Hope you've got a little bit from it, and thanks very much for coming out on a filthy night.
Thank you.